Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook. The podcast helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon's back.
Yay!
If you didn't check out episode 80, the one we had last week, it's a little bit of a weird one. I was sick and I kind of just went on a ramble. So you don't need to listen to that one. But we're very, very, very glad to have you back.
Thank you for doing the episode.
Personally.
Yeah, thank you for doing the episode, dude. And
yeah.
Empowering through the sickness, man.
The sickness. Is that like a... No, it's not... Why is that
Disturbed.
Like Disturbed?
Yeah, down with the sickness.
Down with sickness?
Yeah.
I was down with it.
Yeah, you were down with it.
I still got a little bit of the sniffles, so hopefully they don't come out too much in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to cut out them if I spot them. But
yeah, it's just our Michigan sniffles at this
exactly.
point. It's cold out right now.
It is.
Yeah,
you said it was wind chill,
cold.
6 degrees?
Yeah, unseasonably cold right now. So forgive us for being a little sick and congested.
Yeah, I
hope you feel better about it.
I don't do well with the cold.
I don't either.
I don't like
I'm not a cold guy, which is interesting because you go to Wisconsin a lot, right? And
it's
cold up there.
Yeah.
It's cold up there, man.
It's great when like there's snow on the ground and there's stuff that you're doing, but if just like walking around, and especially when there's no snow, for whatever reason, it always feels colder when it's cold and there's no snow.
It's
when
true.
There's snow, it feels about right.
It's true.
You know?
Yeah.
At least that's how I am mentally.
I agree with that 100%. Especially when you have like a really clear night with no snow and it's just freezing cold. Yeah. Those are the worst.
Yeah,
I
for
hate
sure.
Those. I hate those.
So hopefully you enjoyed us talking about the weather for a little bit.
Right. That was about the lowest level of banter we could have chosen right
Pretty
there.
much.
But it did change. Just to say that like it's been pretty brutal so far. So hopefully it's not going to be as bad moving forward, but we'll see. We live in Michigan after all, so
we do, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
It does kind of set the tone for kind of what this episode's going to be about. Usually we have an appetizer, then a main dish. Where the appetizer, we have a quick question that we're commonly asked, or that we know other artists and musicians ask, and just kind of express our opinion on it, or some technical questions. And then for the meat and potatoes and the main dish, we have a topic that we really more in depth converse about. To figure it out.
Yep, absolutely.
Today we're just going to kind of, change up our order today. We're going to just get a bunch of appetizers instead of getting an appetizer and a main dish.
And sometimes it's better.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better. Yep.
Definitely can be. Especially if it's like a plate of nachos.
Ooh. Nachos, and you have like maybe some soft pretzels on the side. So you can take from there, and you have the Chili's mozzarella sticks that are really famous right now.
Just get 4 people, all of them eating it, sharing the appetizers, and
just having conversation.
Exactly.
That's when it's the most fun. You
That's
don't have
what we're
to
doing today.
saw into the chicken parmesan, or anything like that. Just finger food, man. Nice and easy.
It's all about sharing, all about conversation.
That's right.
Just nice, chill, easy. So that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I've got 2 questions that I'm bringing to the table. Brandon's got 2 questions that he's bringing to the table. And ready to shoot the shit?
Let's do it, dude.
All right.
Let's do it.
I'll start off with a quick appetizer question. How do I know if my mix is too busy? And that can be at the mixing stage, but also in like the production and the composing stage.
Very
like,
much
how do you
so.
know when you are creating a song if it's too busy or not? I think this can be tough because our inclination as people is to always want to add things.
Yeah.
To make it better, you add something to it. Very rarely is our first reaction to take something away, especially if you're jamming with a bunch of musicians, putting together a song. Oh, I can try this. Oh, I can try that. Oh, it sounds cool. Let's throw this in. Oh, if you're doing this, I can play this on top of that. At some point, it can be hard to be like, well, wait a minute. We don't need that. Let's take something back.
Right.
And then once you get to the mix down, it's like, well, all this stuff going on. How is that too busy too? So, how do you know when a mix is too busy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough one to balance. It's probably one of the most common things that you see when you're doing production, and when you're doing recording, because like you said, we have the natural inclination to want to keep adding, and like something that we're trying to add is obviously compensating for something we're not hearing, right? And I think like some of the pitfalls that in line there is like sometimes there might not be the right effect on the guitar, there might not be the right effect on the vocal, right? There might not be the right tone on something, right? And you're trying to make up for that, right? And like one of the examples that I'm thinking of is like you want to add a warm pad to the song, right? And like that can be great, and that can fill in a lot of gaps and that you feel like you might need. But that also means that you're not getting it from somewhere else where you already should maybe have it in the first place, right? So that's just like one of the instances. And like you said, this is a very common problem, very common. Like sometimes dialing back is sometimes the answer to that too. Maybe you get a little bit too far ahead of yourself. But like, when do you know when to do that? When do you go across that point? And at some point, you either realize you're trying to chase your own tail, right? And the song's not going to where you need to go, or you kind of just start hating it like at a certain point, right? And then like you kind of get a headache and it's like, wow, this is just not what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you know what? The hardest part about getting there is having to admit that and then going back and scaling everything back because you've already put all this work into it. You get a sunk cost kind of fallacy where it's like, I already did all this. We might as well just keep going, right? But sometimes it's necessary to pull it back. And usually the songs with less game plan, less songwriting involved in the forefront of it, the more this tends to enhance, I guess, the issue, right? Yeah. That and then insecurity as well. That's also another thing too. So it could be psychological. So lots of different roots to this, lots of different causes. Really only a couple different ways to really recognize it. And it's tough to dial it back. It's super tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of the composition side of it, I agree. Like it definitely, that's the step you need to do is if it does get to that point, bring something back. But like for me, recognizing is kind of the thought process of as a listener's perspective of when people are listening to it at the end of the day, like the most things that people can pay attention to in a song, like actively pay good attention to is like two things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at any given point within the mix, there should be two things that are like the most important. And that can kind of help make that decision of, okay, well, what's important here and what needs to be brought forward and whatnot. A lot of times that's like the simplest thing of, oh, this isn't full enough. We'll find out what's important and bring that up. And that'll help kind of fill it out a little bit. But it's like, oh, well, there's this crazy bass line going, there's this vocal harmony, and there's this guitar solo. It's like, okay, well, hold on. Two things as a rule of thumb, for me personally, what is most important at this point in the song? Well, it's a guitar solo song, so we'll bring that forward. Like it's a guitar solo part of the song, so we'll bring that forward. So maybe we'll make the bass line more simple, so it's not competing. Yeah, and then the lead vocals just kind of doing background vocal stuff. So we'll bring that back and bring the backing vocals up a little bit more and automate it so that it fills out the sound because now these important parts are forward instead of having to add something to that section to make it sound more full. Right. I feel like bridges are where this happens a lot of, oh, this isn't fill. It's not as full. It's coming off the chorus directly. It's this full period. Yeah. Either the bridge is, let's just break it down entirely and go bare bones, or let's have this like big solo or big climactic. And if you go that route and you keep adding and putting new things in just for that part, I feel like that's when you can run across the problem of it being too busy. And then on the mix side of it, I personally love mixes where everything has a place. Yeah. And I mix in the stereo field, very, very spatially conscious of, okay, if I'm watching this being performed or this is being performed, where is everything fitting? And if something's fitting there, I don't really want to mask it with something else that's fitting there. Sure. Unless it is a background element. So when you're mixing, if you're doing your own stuff and you realize, hey, I'm working on this guitar, and there's no place for it to go. Because like the horns are here, I don't want to mask that. And it makes that muddy. Oh, then the backing vocal's here, and then it doesn't fit because there's also the piano is bleeding over here or whatnot. Yeah. Then you can be like, okay, this is getting a little too busy now. Yeah, yeah. Because not everything has a place anymore. Right. That's a personal thing. Now there's like a wall of sound where it's just. But even then, I would say everything still does have a place. It just bleeds together and blends. It does. So that's, to me, the biggest way, once you get to the mixing process of it, is does everything fit somewhere? And if not, then you know it's too busy. Yeah, I think that makes sense too. You know, especially when you're talking about like the scalability issues, you know, because oftentimes we try to write with, you know, climax in mind, right? Like last chorus is typically very full, lots of stuff going on. You know, it's the most interesting chorus in the song most of the time. And if you keep trying to climb that mountain's going to get really steep, very steep. And, you know, when you get to that last part and you're just adding stuff just to add stuff, you really have to be conscious about that. Like, does this shaker really need to be here? Like, does this tambourine really need to be here? Fun fact, it probably does. The tambourine usually helps out a lot. Tambourines are great for adding energy. Yeah. And like, you don't even have to hear them, and it adds something. You know? I bring them down pretty much so far in a lot of my mixes, but they're just, when you mute and unmute it, it's like, man, you don't necessarily hear it, but fuck, you feel it. Oh yeah. Yep. That's one of those things. That's one thing that I wish I knew earlier in my recording career. Same. It's so funny because if I get a song, like a lot of the time I'll end up doing auxiliary percussion like that, like shaker, tambourine, and it just adds so much without adding a ton. And it's like, so you bring up an interesting point that I want to talk to you about real quick on your topic is
the mixing part of it.
Yeah.
Do you make those decisions before you get to mixing? Like, do you decide that it's too busy before you get there, or does the mixing process help with that, or does it hurt it?
So the very first thing I do when I start set a mix is I gain stage,
Mhm.
and then I set the level of everything, get a basic level, and then I do a basic pan of, okay, where's everything going to go?
Yeah.
So before I do any of the what people think of as mixing of EQ, compression, and whatnot, I get the volumes, and then I get the spatial spot. So very early in the mix is when I make that decision of, okay, is this too busy or not?
Gotcha.
But even then, sometimes even just looking at the track count, I can tell sometimes. Actually, I'm going to hold off on my answer to the second part of that because it kind of relates to the second appetizer that I'm going to talk about later in this episode. So that one's going to be a very interesting one. So you want to stick around for that.
That's right. Yep. That's right. Yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. No, I just find that sometimes even like getting into the mix part of it, you know, if those decisions haven't been made, the mix isn't going to be like awesome, you know, because it's like we're still kind of like venturing into that production stage of it, and we're still trying to figure out certain things. And it's like, man, we need to decide this earlier, you know. And I think a lot of that just comes with experience and maturity, you know, and really just knowing. And it's something that we're always learning too, you know, because genres are forever changing, music's forever changing, and our tastes are forever changing, you know, and our technical abilities are forever changing too. So now we can do certain things on certain parts that we couldn't do before, you know.
Crazy.
That's a really interesting one, and that's a really tough one to get right, and you won't get it right, I think, like sometimes the first time around. If you do, then it's special, you know. But like sometimes it really takes a lot of work to kind of get there and know when to add stuff and when not to.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. So I think this one actually leads to my second question better than my first one. So I want to tackle my second question.
Okay, you're going to switch the order?
I'm going to switch the order.
All right, cool.
So mine is, how much should I automate my mixes? And I think it works out really well because we had just talked about automation, right? And automation can be a huge part of the production process. But it's also a massive part of the mixing process. Yeah. I want you to take away first. How much should we be automating our mixes?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to just do a quick description of what automation is.
Yeah.
It is when throughout a song you are recording a change of something in your DAW that then gets replicated every time you play through that certain period of time. So like if the volume is at like minus 10 dB on the fader of that track layer during the whole song, but during the bridge, it goes up to unity at 0 dB. That change from 10 to 0, you add an automation line in the program that takes that and increases the volume of the track during that section and brings it back down. You can do it with volume, EQ moves, compression moves, anything in a mix, and that's what automation is. It's adding motion in the mixing process, which is really saying that is my answer a lot, because mixing is like the last performance on the song. So when you're playing a bass, playing guitar, you're singing, you are musically ebbing and flowing and going with it. Like that's part of what music is the attack, decay, sustain, release, all that stuff. It is that dynamicness to it. A mix should have dynamics to it as well.
Agreed.
Things need to come forward and pull back and pulse as a whole, not just, this is the stuff, keep it flat, consistent all the way through. So my answer is on most songs, a lot.
I agree.
A good solid amount of automation.
You know, it took me a lot of time to realize that this is very important. And I think this is also like a very experienced maturity thing, right? Because when you're listening to music and you're not listening critically, you don't recognize the things that are being pulled forward or dropped back as much as you would if you're listening with a critical ear. And I think if you take that information and you apply it to your own mixes, you think that you shouldn't be doing that, right? But that's because we're not recognizing that on our end of listening, right? You should always be automating something in your mixes, you know, at some point, right?
Anytime
not all the time, but like always do it within a mix.
At the transition points, section to section, like what is the strength of each part and what leads into the other part. Even if it's just like a little bit of a bump. Of the drums before the chorus, just to get that little extra emphasis on the fill. Or something that's really common, increasing the level of the low end by 1 or 2 dB, or the level of the drums at 1 or 2 dB during the chorus, so that it just hits harder. Or automating the pannings. Now the guitars are a lot wider during the chorus, so it sounds like it grows.
I love doing overhead hits, with crashes. Like I'll automate up the crash a little bit just to make it feel like it's a bigger impact just with the drums itself, because the overheads provide a lot of like information there, and it can sound very energized. Or you pull up a tambourine part at a certain section, pull it down, just to catch the listener's ear and the listener's attention. Even if it's just for that split second, something's always moving. It's always interesting, Now, you don't need to go crazy on it all the time, not all the time, but sometimes you do need to go crazy on it. For example, like when you have let's say you're working all in the box and you work with like multiple pedals in a row with guitar, and then you have an amp sim, and then you have your cab, and then it's out, right? You can just turn on and off your little Ibanez tube screamer within the DAW by bypassing the plugin. That's the same thing as doing a stomp, when you're playing it live, right? So like you're doing very human things with automation. Like these are what we do live to make the song come alive, right? This is how we actually play it.
Yeah, should be in production too.
Exactly, and it should be the same way in production, because things don't remain static live.
Oh yeah,
they don't.
Even like automating effects is like a stomp box. If you're doing effects on vocals as well, or drums or whatnot, that is a big thing that you can do at the end of a chorus. Automate up the delay so it kind of like rings out into the bridge or something, or duck down. Side chaining is basically a kind of automation, but you're just tying the automation to a different source. So like if you side chain the delay on a vocal, so when the vocal is singing, it's not as prominent, but when he stops singing, then the delay comes forward more. De-essing is basically an automation as well, but it's an automated automation.
Right.
And there are plugins that make it real easy to kind of do automation, to even things out, like Vocal Rider, Bass Rider, things like that.
Yep. Lots of AI like type of plugins now, machine learning type of plugins too, that make this even more crazy these days.
And there's a reason those things exist.
Better. Yeah, exactly. There's an absolute reason those things exist, and they work really well. They work really well.
Very well.
Yeah. Real quick, when should you do automation?
When the song requires it.
Yeah, it's like a trick question, right? Because a lot of people are like, you should wait till the end once you get everything right. It's like, okay, just do it when you feel like you should do it. Right. Like,
I think you're right. It relates to the first one because like you can also automate when it feels like it's too busy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what's not necessary here?
Right.
Automate it down or cut it out entirely.
Fade it out.
Yeah. Fade it out
or something, or bring it up as a crescendo or something. I like to do like a lot of ending automation right before I finish the mix too. Like I'm talking like the 1 dB up here, half a dB up here, just to pull it up at a certain section and tuck it back, just enough, and it's not going to be like a boom fader ride, like we're going 10 dB here, but just the really subtle stuff. Those are like, that's like the finishing move for me is the really subtle 1 dB, 2 dB differences, and then call it a day on the mix. And that's when it really starts to come alive.
Yeah. Like at the very final hit, like big climax, the chorus, the backing vocals, automate those up 2 dB and bring back the acoustic a little bit. So it's like that big like fullness push to the end.
Yeah.
But you got to bring something back to keep it like not too heavy, because then you're just going to hit a limiter once you get to the mastering stage. So you got to like balance that out. But yeah, just that big push of this is important. You want to hear this.
Yeah.
And just pushing that forward.
Absolutely.
Right. It's super, and it's super fun to do.
It's super fun, especially now that we have the boards to do it.
It's been so much fun automating with these things.
Yeah.
I'll just like I'll listen to the first time. Okay, I want to make these changes here. Listen to a second time. Okay, yep, I want to like practice it. And then I'll listen to a third time and make all my automation changes. And I'll go through and clean it up. And it's just like
I do the same thing. Same thing, man. It's great.
Especially when I do acoustic songs, like when it's like real basic, like that can really make a difference. It's just that extra motion to it.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And it's fun watching the motion of the board after too. It's like, we did this work.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Which is crazy to think about. Like we have this automation in DAWs, but back in the day, like you would literally have the engineer, the mixing engineer, the recording engineer, and sometimes a member of the band, like on the mixing console, all moving faders to try to balance it out and doing multiple takes. It was a performance. And if someone messed up, you'd have to redo it and go to a whole new roll of tape. It was expensive and it took a lot of time and practice.
Very time consuming. Very time consuming. Yeah. We're so blessed with the capabilities we have today.
So much.
Be thankful.
All right. So that was the second appetizer. That was a good transition.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go into my second one now, which does kind of relate, because I mentioned how knowing when a mix is too busy and whatnot, and I just mentioned how sometimes just by looking at the track count, I can tell if it's going to be too busy or not. Second question is, should I always double track guitars, or is one enough? This is an interesting one to me, because I do have artists that I work with who double, triple, quadruple track guitars all the time. because it's a very common tactic to do.
It is.
Way back even to like the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, like that was you know, I think I know Oasis did it a whole lot.
Sure.
And they would like do like a clean track underneath an electric guitar track to get that extra like clarity to it, which is a really cool technique.
Yeah.
You can even use a DI if you blend in the DI track underneath an amp.
Get the
you can
string
add
kind
that
of sound that gets extra percussiveness.
Percussiveness, yeah.
Which can be great.
It can be. But especially when you have a lot of other stuff going on in the mix, double tracking every single guitar just gets real busy.
Yeah.
And if you want that width, that wideness to a more simple spot, double tracking is great, especially if it's like a verse where you have just an acoustic guitar. You double track that, pan left to right, different takes, so they're slightly different. Even different guitars, like one's brighter, one's more full. It really adds this cool width to it.
Totally.
But then also, if you have a lot of other stuff going on, like I'm saying, and the guitars aren't the main focus of it, and it can be really powerful to just have a mono guitar pan somewhere to really cut through. Like my reference song, whenever I listen to a system to like know how I want to attack it, like how it sounds, has become Dreams by Fleetwood Mac.
Yep, I knew it.
And during the chorus, the acoustic guitar comes in and it's just hard pan left.
Yeah.
And it's just a single guitar.
Yep.
And it just sounds so good. And it's not pan left and right. It's not full. It's not wide. It's just right there.
Yep.
Just doing what it needs to do. Man, I think it sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I think it really depends on what the song calls for.
Totally agree.
And that is one of the things I do most when I get files from someone like, hey, I'm not getting happy with this mix. It sounds muddy or whatever. One of the first things I'll do sometimes is go through the tracks, be like, okay, listen to this, listen to that. All right, this one's not needed. Yeah. Mute. This one's not needed. Mute. Okay, adjust the panning a little bit. Now there's slightly different things on the left and right, and it sounds like it's more interesting stereo-wise instead of just double, double, double. Yeah. And right there, it clears things up because now everything has a space, which goes into how I know the mix is too busy if it doesn't have a space. And when everything's double-tracked, less things have a space. But that's my thought process
so
about
it depends.
I just went on a ramble.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it.
You give your thought process on it.
Yeah, no, because I'm in the same boat as you, and honestly, I think you bring up a bunch of really great points that I'm gonna try to touch on the best I can. First of all, is a lot of it has to deal with production and songwriting, right? Like I know that sucks, and like it's like it depends, and it truly depends, right? It depends maybe on the section change. It depends on the flow of the song. It depends on how big you want the song to be. It just depends. Now I love doing a lot of double track stuff. I love doing a lot of double track stuff for rhythms and stuff. But if the song starts out with just a vocal and guitar, I'm not double tracking the guitars most likely, right? It just doesn't make sense for me to do all the time, right? And but of course that's within context. Maybe you have two guitar players and you guys need to both play rhythm over it, and you want to both play acoustics at the same time. Sure, that's cool too, because all politics come into play at that point, right? It's like if we had two guitarists, if they both want to play, it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll double track, you know? All right. It's part of the sound, I guess, you know? So yeah, that's a really tough question, because I mean, you're talking about, you brought up the arrangement issue, right? When people aren't happy with, hey, this doesn't sound as full as possible. Mixing's awesome. I love mixing. It's one of my favorite things. It can really bring things to life and add that extra whatever percentage on top. Most of the time, though, the reason why it doesn't sound like that is because there's a problem with the arrangement or the production. Yeah. Most of the time. Yep. Mixing will not fix that. Yeah. And if it does, it puts a Band-Aid on it. It's like a bandage. It's not a true fix. It just gets you by, right? Yeah. I'm going to add something to that, not to be like attacking people, but sometimes it's also the performance. Yes. Because guitars, specifically for this question, guitars are percussive instruments. Yes, very much so. You are hitting a string. There's an attack to it. So if there's timing issues between the different takes, well, now there's that flanging, that kind of sound to it where it's not aligned, it's not tight, and that's going to make it sound messy. Right, because there's not a true phase relationship because they're both independent takes, right? But there is a phase relationship, and that can be really bizarre sounding if it's not tightened up, you know, and if there was another question we were going to do, it's like, should you get that right on the front end or whatever? I'm not going to dive into that here. That's an appetizer for a future episode. Right. But when you are doing this, though, I feel like you should get as close as humanly possible, right? So, like I said, it really depends on me, on what I want to do too. Leads, I'll often leave single tracked, unless we do harmonies, you know, or something. And it's really a convoluted mess at some point. But like when you get in there, you kind of feel it. It's like, yes, we should double track this part. This would sound so. We should quad track this part. I think I brought up one time we had like six guitars on a chorus.
You mentioned that.
But we were doing double track guitars, regular rhythms. We did an octave, or it was like different chords. It was different chord shapes. On top of that, that was tucked back. And then we did a fuzz guitar under it with single notes. And we had 6 guitars going, and they all had a crucial role.
Yeah.
Now, if you do the same thing over and over and over again, sure, that can maybe sound maybe a little bit bigger, but at some point you have a diminishing marginal return. It starts getting messy. You start masking each other.
Yeah.
The definition of the pick attack isn't there as much anymore.
It stops having a space in the mix. Just becomes a bleh of sound. Not a wall of sound.
It's like bleh
of sound.
Yeah. It's like this. It's like a
noise.
A rounded out wall of sound. There's no attack, and it just gets messy. So out of all that being said, it depends. It depends. It really does. It really does.
Because maybe you want that. You want that just noise guitar so that other things can poke through. You get like a really tacky bass line that's pushing through it, or you want the drums to really be emphasized. You don't want the attack of the guitars to mess with it as much. So you just go like noise and then let that be clear and just push on top.
Yeah.
So there's times to do it. So like the answer, like everything we talk about, there's a time, yes and no.
Yeah.
White and black.
Yeah, totally. And
gray.
you know, to your dreams point too, you know, having just the acoustic on the left side, I think that's badass. I'm working on a cool project right now where there's acoustic on the left side and an electric guitar on the right side. There's no double track.
I love that.
You know, but they both play independent things, but they're all in the same ballpark. And you know what? You still get the same width out of it. You might actually get a bigger width.
You get more
because they're not playing the same thing. Yeah. Right. So it actually separates itself. Exactly. The tones separate themselves, and it just sounds beautiful. You know, you have to do it right, of course, because this can get super messy, right? But fortunately, the person I'm working with has done it really well and always does a really good job doing this. And it just sounds gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous way to do it. So you can mess with this in all different kind of configurations.
Now, I personally, in my own musical journey, I've been leaning towards not double tracking guitars whenever possible, like just to get that single, clean, clear sound. I will double mic. Yeah. I'll get like a room and then a close mic, or I'll do like a ribbon and a colorful dynamic microphone, or a small condenser and a large frame condenser to get like that kind of extra fullness on the take, but I won't double track it. And I'll still put them both in one location. I've been really trying to mess around more with let everything have its own space. That whole like acoustic left, electric right, and let it fill in the middle. Really been doing that on like focusing on drums and making sure everything is clear where that is. And it's just been a different kind of sound. It's been really fun to play around.
I think that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Yeah, it's like one of those sounds where you don't hear it as much anymore. Because I'm an avid double tracker of a lot of things. But like I said, only really when necessary. But like, you know, that lends itself to kind of hearing that sound today. You know, it's like people want to hear that. I'm like, okay, we'll just double track it, you know. But it's like exciting when I get projects like I've just mentioned, like where things are single tracked and it's like, oh, we have the ability to put the, like, let's say organ over here and bring it up on the right side, and there it is, and then we're going to tuck it back, you know, and electric guitar on the left side, and acoustic on the right or something, you know, shaker on the left, because it balances out the ride on the right, you know, or something, you know, and it's
or
like
the tambourine
now
on the
we're being like symmetrical and like in a way, but it's not the same.
And that's all I've been doing with like my stuff recently. I'm like things I've been trying, like I'm taking more producer role with. I'll be like, okay, let's have it with a space in mind, and then what I've been doing, well, specifically with my stuff, what I've been playing around with is when it is time for the chorus to get full and big, instead of adding layers to that kind of stuff, I've been adding layers with like vocal and vocal layering and playing around more with that. Yeah. So that fullness is super wide vocal sound. Totally. On top of the specific instrument sound. And I've been liking how that's been going.
That's killer. That's killer.
So that's just been a fun thing that I've been doing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Because vocals, that's a great way to do it. It's a great way to do it, man. Yeah. Yeah. Love vocal stacks.
We're on the last appetizer already.
That's it.
Man,
that's it.
These things go quicker.
We're
than
on the buffalo chicken dip, man.
Oh man,
I can't believe we're on the last appetizer. Yep. And you know what? This one kind of goes with the other ones. This one's a little bit further out. I'm just trying to connect the dots as much as I can.
Yeah. It's a spinach artichoke dip amongst all the fried foods.
Exactly. You know, you have a good baseline. You know, of course, this one's not about base, but
Could be.
It could be.
Could be. We'll
This
figure out. We'll
question,
find out.
yeah, right.
I keep interrupting you. We'll find out now.
No, you're not wrong though. You're not wrong though, because it could be. It actually could be. How can I get more punch out of my drums?
Oh, sidechain the bass.
That works. That works.
It relates.
That works.
It relates.
That works.
I'm going to take this one away.
Yeah. So, interesting question. I would ask you, where are you at in the process first, right?
Where you at?
Have we already recorded the drums? If not, hit the drum kit harder. That would be my first option is actually be consistent and hit it hard, right? Actually play like you're meant to play it. Maybe use the back of the stick on the snare, if you really want that.
Oh,
bah,
that
on
heavy,
there.
yep.
Yeah. Tune them a certain way. Tune your drums, that'd be great. I say that and I'm terrible at tuning drums. That's something I'm working on getting better, but
I am not looking forward to that part of my musical journey once I get an acoustic
it's a
kit.
pain
I'm going
in
to
the
get a kit.
ass.
I'm going to get an acoustic kit here someday.
Yeah, no, it's
and
a
when
pain
I
in
do,
the ass. Yeah, fuck all that.
That's a learning curve that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's something else. It's something else. Because you hit it, it goes boom. It's like, all right. Like I can hear the note, but it's like, then you start tuning it all, and then it's like, well, this one's not as tight, and like it's like then you're doing like you're how you change the tire.
Yep,
yeah, exactly like that. It's like this is annoying. I'd rather change strings. Yeah, so that would be my first question is like, where are you at? So if we're in the recording process, I would suggest those first. If we've already recorded the drums and they're not just quite as punchy, that's really, I feel like what this question would come in is like, how do I get more punch out of it? Of course, it's going to be like a mixing thing for a lot of people's minds. But for me, it's like a production thing too. It's like, oh, we could layer other samples under this, First of all, before we even get to layering though, is like, let's check the phase of all the microphones on the kit, right?
That's true. One more punch.
Yeah.
If you have a top and a bottom snare,
yep.
There's the phase line.
Exactly.
The overheads, what's the center? Like, what's the focus of the kit? The snare.
Exactly.
Or is it aligned to the phase of the snare?
Yep. Exactly. Not only that, it's like, okay, let's listen to the tom bleed.
Yeah.
Because, that could have a lot to do with it too. Because if you're getting a lot of cymbal bleed in your toms, and that's kind of slurring the image a little bit, and you're kind of like, you need to gate things and tighten it up. So I'm going to start with phase. I'm going to start with gating. I'm going to really do all that I can. Hopefully gating isn't as tedious because you took the time ahead of time to hopefully, mitigate the bleed. Of course, you're only going to do so much at a certain point, but hopefully you took the time and, positioned your overheads correctly. But moving past that, which is very important to do, by the way, in the forefront of things, if you're still not getting that punch out of that, of checking your phase and all that, layering samples underneath is a good option to do because, first of all, they're easily accessible. You can go buy samples.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Before we go into that technical stuff of it, turn up the fader.
Yeah, that works too.
Try that first.
Seriously. Yeah, that works out really well too. Yeah. Yeah, get a good balance.
If you need more punch on the snare, bring up the snare.
Turn the snare up.
See if that helps.
Turn the snare up. Maybe turn off the bottom snare.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's causing it.
Maybe. Just bring it up. Automate it.
Bring it up. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah,
that'd work.
I just wanted to say because I know we're gonna get some technical things now, which are really fun. But like first and foremost, if you need more, just add more.
Yeah,
that's the first thing to try.
Exactly. And if you're finding you're adding more, and you're starting to like really get close to clipping area and your gain staging's wonky. Okay, let's bring it back. Let's add some like, steroids underneath a little bit, find like some good samples that you have that kind of relate to the kit that you're going for and then blend those in. So take a sample, put it with the track with like trigger or drum-a-gog or something and have that play with your sample. Okay, let's take a snare, for instance, right? We want a little bit more top end and bottom end on the snare, but we like the bass snare that we recorded. So we find two samples, one with a nice top end and one with a nice bottom end, okay? So we're gonna take the top end one and put that in first, and we're gonna flip the phase, and we're gonna see which sounds better, okay? And then once you decide on this one actually sounds way better and fuller, well, that's probably because it's more in phase. Now we're gonna bring in the second one, bring in the bottom end one, and you could blend that, and then you flip the phase, and then you're like, okay, cool, that sounds good. This one's inverted, this one's not, this one's regular, okay? So like our original is regular, not inverted according to the overheads or whatever. This one's not inverted either because this one worked out really well, but I'm going to invert the bottom one to make sure that the low end is nice and fat because I'm getting phase cancellation now when I add it in. I kind of blend those together and then sit back, do a good job because like you're going to want to push the samples really hard, right? Yeah. Be cognizant, you know, I mean, you can push them as hard as you want, but you might as well just replace the drums at that point.
Yeah.
But bring them down and then see where they sit now. I guarantee you that will be most of your answer. If that doesn't work, you can add a couple of different things later on, like a transient designer, maybe make the snare hit a little bit more, but then you start dealing with higher peaks and then you got to kind of deal with that. So, or you can do like some really aggressive compression with a very, very slow attack, very fast release, and try to do it like that and try to get that whack out of it. Right.
Yep.
And that can help out a ton too. Saturation is interesting.
Oh yeah,
it's very
saturating on the snare. All the fucking time.
Yeah.
Now, I have a two thing answer. So
yeah.
As you go on,
I'll wrap it up right here.
I'm like, no, take your time. I'm just
I'll
letting
wrap it up right here. Actually, I have two more. So
go for it.
You know, and I should have said the EQ one beforehand, but I'm just gonna do the saturation one. A lot of the time when I reach for saturation on drums, I'm looking for a little bit more sustain while keeping that that snap in there a little bit, right? Now you can add too much saturation and you can kill the drums punch wise, right? So you got to be very careful. And all these saturators work in different ways. And so you kind of have to do a little bit of trial and error to figure this one out, right? Decapitator is a great one. That's one of my favorites. I mean, you throw it on a snare and you cook that thing up to 2 or 3. Like seriously, it's like magic. You keep all the sustain and you keep most of the punch, right? But you get volume out of it. And man, is that key, because you can punch the shit out of your drums. But then you'll realize you'll have no headroom moving on. And you're like, uh-oh, why is everything else not working? And why is my mix so quiet? And why is my limiter clipping off my drums? And it's like, because you got to gain stage proper. And that's how we kind of get there. Saturation is a little trick. The last thing you could try to do, obviously, is EQ. Put a nice high shelf on the snare if you want more snap out of it. You know, see if you need to brighten it up. See if you need to get more thwack out of it at like 1 or 2K. Right.
Clean up the hi-hat if the snare's bleeding in the hi-hat. That's
exactly
all the time.
Exactly.
Hi-hat doesn't need that low fundamental like a 300.
Do a high pass around 90, you know, if you're getting a lot of kick bleed in there, you know, and a lot of pillowiness, you know, or something. So lots of different things that you can kind of do. It all really depends on like your source material and where you're at in the process, of course, and how you're going to handle it accordingly. I'm off my soapbox, Sean. On to you.
Oral exciter, bus compressor.
It's always the oral exciter.
Yep.
The bus compressor is a really good one.
Yes.
Because I do that every single time.
Bus compressors are great.
Yeah. So good.
Yes.
The SSL one.
Yeah. SSL and the SSL emulator plugins or whatnot. That's
they're
so
really
good.
nice. They're really the Kramer Pi one by Waves.
Is it
very good too?
I'll have to mess around with it.
Very good too.
Yeah.
Very, very good for snap.
And don't be afraid to play around with the auto release functionality of it.
Yeah.
That's really where the magic comes from with the SSL stuff. So yeah. And then oral exciter.
That's it.
On overheads, just adds that extra crispness, that sparkle, and helps bring out the top end transients on other stuff because it's adding harmonics to it.
Right.
So a lot of times if it's not punching the way, there's not a lot of that high end clickiness, clarity that helps it cut through the mix.
Yep.
That's what I find is usually
absolutely
a decent part of the issue.
Totally agree.
It's like on toms or whatnot, EQ the high end clickiness of it to get it to cut through.
Exactly.
And then bus compressor. Helps everything just kind of
It does.
Yeah. Yep. Or parallel compression with
parallel compression is also phenomenal to do. I love Devil Lock for that by Sound Toys.
Yeah.
So good.
I got Pulsar Smasher.
That's also a great one.
That one.
I use that one a lot.
Yeah.
I just used it yesterday, and then I used. I also like the Distressor too on parallel stuff.
Nice.
Really nice. Really nice. So the Devil Lock here's my thought process real quick. The Devil Lock is more for sustain for me. You know, I feel like I get a lot of fullness from that, a lot more excitement from it, and then that'll be blended at really low levels, really low, because it makes a big difference quickly. And then the Distressor will be my snap that I'm looking for. And that's what gets you the extra thwack. I keep saying that, but it gets you a little bit something extra while blended into, and you're not going to raise your peak meter by a total like a lot, you know. And it's totally worth putting it in there, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, if things are starting to like peak or clip or whatnot, having that bus compressor on it can help you kind of keep that volume up there, but tame it a little bit.
Exactly.
So
yeah, good stuff.
That's it. That's all the appetizers.
I love talking about drums, man. Drums are fun.
That's something I wish I had more opportunities to mix. I mean, not mix, to record. I mix them all the time.
Yeah, totally.
I don't have a lot of opportunities to record them, and I really wish I did.
Yeah.
Because I have some mics and pre's and things that sound real good on drums that I really want to use.
No,
I want to
get
use
ya.
them so bad.
Yeah, drums are certainly a journey, man. They're certainly a journey, dude.
Oh man,
Long journey.
You should invite me over sometime to bring some of my shit to record some drums.
Deal.
It'd be so much fun.
Get a drummer.
Yep.
Yeah.
That'll be what
I suck at the drums.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not great anymore.
I'm not good either. I've never been good. That is the next thing. We did a guitar shootout day like a couple months ago at this point. I still need to get the session files out to people.
I still have the piece of tape on my cab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works.
It's a great spot.
It's a sweet spot.
Great spot.
So the next one I want to do is I want to do drums.
Yeah, I think it'd be badass.
And that'll be a lot of fun.
I think that'd be badass.
And I got enough preamps
in
order to do it. So
now we can do it.
All right, we're getting into the rambly part of it.
Next week.
With that being said, those are all our appetizers. Hopefully you enjoyed the small topics, the more casual thing we did today. If there are any smaller topics or questions that you have that you'd like us to cover, be it technical, music related, just general questions at all, you can let us know in the comments of this episode or any other episode that any place you're listening to this. Now Spotify has a comments feature, so you can hit us up there. We're on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, on Spotify, Apple Music, any podcast platform.
Yep.
As far as I know, they change so often, I feel like at this point.
Yeah, they do.
But
the podcast ones change all the time.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
really do, yeah.
They really do. Or you can hit us up at musicmakerspodcast@musicmakerscookbook.com if you want to email us and message us directly.
Yep.
We'll get back to you as soon as we can. But that's a great way for you to be involved with things we talk about here.
Yeah, we might even take
Cookbook.
one of your questions for an appetizer one day.
Yeah,
So
no,
let
we
us know.
probably, we almost definitely will.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
would say the chances of that are very fucking high.
I would say so too.
Yeah.
I would say so too.
But that being said, on top of just hitting us up for the podcast, if you want to potentially work with one of us to get your song sound great as possible and someone who knows the technical things on how to deal with all things, get more punch out of your drums,
That's right.
you can contact Brandon.
Oh, thanks, Sean. Yeah, you can contact me and find out more about what I do at studio222recording.com. I have a quote request form on there that I think works now. Thank God. I still have the disclaimer on there for now. So if you go on there and say it says there's issues with it, just if you don't get an answer back from me, there's obviously an issue with it.
Yeah.
But you should be able to get an answer back from me. Now I should be able to see everything. But you can contact me there on my quote request form. Just get a hold of me. I just want to hear about your project. We'll talk about it and see what we can do to get it sounding the best that we can. And I know Sean has a really nice website that he does a lot of really good work on. Where can we find you there?
Appreciate the segue. It'll lead up to what I got. Yeah, the lob.
The lob.
Woo. If you want your song to be remote mixed and mastered, and you are acoustic, folk, rock, or blues, those are the main genres I do, you can hit me up at swsrecordings.com. I also do recording and stuff if you happen to be in the area, but I do a lot of remote stuff. I also do one-on-one artist development coaching, so if you want to reach me up there, I also have a submission form. Once again, my website, swsrecordings.com, and it's basically this podcast, but the topics are more suited for you, your career, where you're at, and helping you kickstart the advancement in your music career and make a living.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we all want to do.
That's all we all want to do.
All we want to do.
But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for dining in with us and just nibbling on these appetizers. Appreciate it. That all being said, from our kitchen to yours.
Bon appetit.